Can you see it now?
Good afternoon, all. This is Akansha from People Matters, and we are back with an exciting session of our webcast in partnership with Enparadigm on 10 burning questions facing GICs to become future ready. The Global In-House Center model accounts for over 25% of the global offshore services market. The contributions of a GIC are an integral part of an organization's overall value chain. It is no surprise that global players all over the world are now making astute investments to build strategically strong and well positioned GICs in regions best served for rapid growth. GICs in India now number about 1,100, employing more than 8 lakh individuals and generating approximately 23 billion in revenue. Undoubtedly, GICs are seen as great value additions to their parent companies. However, due to unprecedented digital disruption in industries worldwide, the role of Indian GICs needs to evolve. But how do GICs enable their growth and become the GICs of the future? In this webcast by People Matters and Enparadigm, we will be uncovering how the GICs can become a world-class talent hub and continue to be the center of efficiency by being at the vanguard of productivity enhancements. For the session, I take the pleasure to invite and introduce the speakers for today. We have with us Dr. Madana Kumar, VP and Global Head, Leadership Development, UST Global. A servant leadership evangelist, passionate professional, and a leader close to 4 decades of experience, Dr. Madana Kumar is currently balancing two roles, one in corporate as a vice president and global head of leadership development at UST Global. Second, in consulting, spreading the message of servant leadership and helping organizations implement and benefit from this new leadership paradigm. We also have with us John Cherian, Executive Director and co-founder in Paradigm. John endeavors to make the complex simple, and his belief in the power of learning to make people and businesses better has been the efficient driving force in the N Paradigm journey. John is an IIM Ahmedabad alumnus. Our partner for today's webcast is N Paradigm. Enparadigm is one of the India's leading experiential learning and gamification companies. The company leverages digital and mobile products to deliver simulation-based learning with a rigorous sustained learning approach to drive business impact and behavioral change across roles and functions. And Paradigm was recognized among the fastest growing tech companies as part of the Deloitte Tech Fast 500 APAC program in 2018. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webcast. For those who are live, can simply submit post queries at any time during the session. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have an exciting topic to discuss in this webcast today. So without any further delay, let me invite John and Dr. Madana Kumar to take over. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Akansha, for that great introduction. And it's a pleasure to have Dr. Madana here with me today to take on these questions of the burning questions that GICs have to become future ready. Welcome, Dr. Madana, to this webcast.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Akansha.
All right. So the format of this webcast is going to be as follows. I'm going to be asking questions to Dr. Madana about questions that are relevant for GICs today. And he's going to be speaking from his experience and also from the various research that we've collected from around the globe. We do have audience poll questions in between, so we'll be releasing a few poll questions for you. And towards the end of the webinar, we'll also have questions that any of you may want to ask Dr. Madana to pick his brain on his thoughts regarding future trends. Okay? So some context setting, Akansha did some of it, but how many GICs? So we have about 1450 GICs in India today. And GICs have had a great growth in the Indian context over the last 20 years. We have about 50 lakh employees in the IT industry, out of which 8 lakh employees work in the GIC context. And the industry has grown to about $23 billion with a growth rate of about 17%, which is double the Indian IT industry growth rate of about 89%. So what makes India the ideal GIC destination? You have over 450 firms in India focusing on emerging technologies, IoT, big data analytics, which are being heavily leveraged by global companies. You have over 3,000 startups today for futuristic technology areas. You have a digitally skilled labor workforce of over 1.5 lakh people and under 5.8 million in the IT industry. which is a headcount growth of 100% over the last 5 years. Nowhere in the world do we have such a large talent. We continue to have over 1 million engineers graduating annually. So, if you project this into the future, you can see that the largest pool of talent for the GICs are going to be in India. 50% of global GICs are set up in the Indian market, out of which you have software or internet GICs. So companies like Google, companies like Uber, etc., have the highest number of GICs and employees in India. Over 90% of GICs come from North America and Europe. In terms of the kind of work that GICs do, you have engineering R&D, which is about 59%, which is the largest segment in both in terms of the number of GICs and the revenue share. You also have HR outsourcing, you have supply chain outsourcing, you have finance outsourcing, but engineering R&D seems to be the biggest one, along with tech R&D. You have also trends where traditionally you have GICs in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Pune, but you have Coimbatore, Ahmedabad, Vadodara, Kochi, etc., which are emerging GIC centers. The three cities named here particularly have proximity to manufacturing facilities and access to low-cost talent. One of the things that you see over the last 5-10 years is that GICs are making a strategic shift from just being cost centers in India or places where you have a cost arbitrage to becoming centers of excellence. And these centers of excellence today drive product innovation, speed to market, and enhance the value proposition for the GIC customers. Before I go forward and hand over to Dr. Madana, a poll question for all of you. Akansha, would you mind pinging the poll question to everyone? The question is, what do each of you see as the biggest reason for operating in-house centers in India? Is it lower cost of overall operations? Is it the ease of operating business? Is it low-cost talent? Is it high-skilled talent? Or is it for future expansion in the Indian market? What do you think is the biggest reason out of these five?
Thank you, John. Audience, we request you to take our first polling question. As John mentioned, the first question says, what do you see as the biggest reason for operating in-house centers in India? We request you to go ahead and share your responses with us.
So I'm going to take a pause for about 30 seconds so that all of you can answer this poll question. And my colleagues here will also help us see what people think.
So, audience, to participate in the first poll, please click on the link that has been provided to you on the chat section. And the event code is 69560. I repeat, the event code is 69560. All the details has been provided to you on the chat section on the right-hand side of the screen. We could see people are responding. So 42% says high skilled talent, 33% says lower cost of overall operations, 33% says low cost talent, 17% says ease of operating business, and 17% says again expansion in Indian market. We could still see the numbers are increasing. People are responding.
So I believe if this question was asked, say about 5 to 7 years back, the number one response would have been low cost talent or lower cost of the overall operations. But it is heartening to see that today high skilled talent seems to be a much bigger reason for companies to open GICs in India.
High skilled talent still remains at 56%, 55%.
All right, Akansha, so shall we move on to the questions to Dr. Madana then?
Yes, yes. I think, John, we can move ahead. So the biggest reason remains high skilled talent with 57% vote.
Okay. All right. So there are a lot of changing expectations today, right? So while there's a lot of thought process about GCCs or GICs as global in-house centers becoming global capability centers for the global market, there are a lot of changing expectations around that, and that requires a lot of strategic capability development at scale, right? This is the age of leveraging digital to transform talent, and also the age of the need for attracting and retaining skilled talent. The question that I have for Dr. Madana over here is, as someone who has been in the forefront of developing capability um, to successfully managing the GIC to GCC transition, what does this transition mean for companies, and what are some of the challenges and trends that you see emerging?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think it is. It's very the responses to the poll question was very interesting. Like you correctly said, a couple of years back, if it was asked, it should certainly have been the cost, which would have been number one. Obviously, things seem to have already changed from a perception point of view, and that is true because when GICs started coming to India. It was primarily because of the labor arbitrage that we had, the low cost of labor and the low cost of operations that that we could provide. So that certainly was the case, and there was no doubt about it. Now, as a country, as a nation, as a host country for this investment, we have a choice. We can either stick with that. We can say that okay, that's a regular income that is coming in. We can continue to just ride on that particular advantage that we have, right? Which is the labor arbitrage advantage. But obviously, if we stay with that, there is a risk, and the risk is that as you would have seen, everything around us is changing. The world is changing. Digitization is changing, significantly things, and obviously a lot of routine jobs are being taken away by automation, right? RPA is taking away a lot of the low-end jobs that GICs used to perform through people. Chatbots have literally replaced several number of call center operatives and things like that in our country. So the voice-based BPOs for example, and the number of them have significantly reduced, and the number of employment in that has reduced, right? So if we stick with the labor arbitrage advantage only, we run the risk of being obsolete, right? And then being redundant, and and then it would have automatically died down. But it is great to see that the leaders who set up the parent companies who set up the such an account or such a center in India have realized that India has something more to offer than just pure lower cost, and that is that's where the realization has come that the only way to remain relevant and the only way to continue to contribute, continue to take benefit out of this GIC movement or GCC movement into India is by us climbing up on the onto the value chain, right? And become, and then thereby become what we call as the global capability center. So by focusing on our capability, right? And the trend is good. The trend is really good. Approximately about 60% of the GICs are already working on R&D activities and things like that, which is certainly a good this thing. So the message is very simple. We have to move from being doers to thinkers, right? From doers to thinkers. And so let me just explain this by a concept called freedom ladder. So John, if you might put that slide up on the freedom ladder, we can take them through that that concept. So the freedom ladder is basically a concept where you would see that initially when we started, if we stay with with the labor arbitrage model, we would have been at a place where Indian units will just wait to be told by the parent company. The parent company will tell us what to do, and we will just do it, deliver it, and then the parent company will come back with the next set of tasks. So this is the lowest level of freedom ladder, right? But then from here, we slowly graduate into the next level, which is what we call it. We go and tell them, okay, look, what can we do next, right? We have these capabilities, we have these people, we could do this. And so we sort of go and ask at least for what we could do next. But even that is not enough. And that is where the next level comes into picture, where we just don't go and ask them what to do, but we actually suggest what we can do, right? We go and tell them that, hey, look, these are some of the problems that we are facing. These are some of the opportunities that we are seeing, right? And then say, and of course, the third level is where we still wait for the parent company to approve before we do something or before we do something different. And then from there, of course, we could potentially move up to the next level, which is what we call as, we don't necessarily need to seek permission. We know what needs to be done. We can get to work on that. We can do that, and then report to the parent company saying that, hey, look, we have done this, and then sort of seek their feedback and see how else it could have been done and things like that. But at the top of the freedom ladder, if you climb up to the highest level, is where the parent company feels so comfortable with us that we are able to provide innovative solutions, and we just need to do the reporting only on a routine manner, not as and when we do everything, right? And that is really the highest level of the freedom ladder, and this is where we need to move to, right? If we stay in the first 1, 2, or even up to third level, we are not going to be able to take advantage of our capability, of our skill sets and things like that, right? And the polls clearly show that we have skills, right? So we got to be able to climb up that freedom ladder, and that is when the parent company gets the best value, as well as the Indian GICs and the employees and the leadership there will find challenge and fulfillment. Right? So that's really where we need to move up. So the challenge for the Indian leaders, the leaders who lead the GICs, is really to help these units to climb up this freedom ladder and reach at least level 4, if not 5.
That's a very interesting ladder, Dr. Madana. Do you think, from a culture perspective, the folks working at the leadership level and also lower down the pyramid in Indian GICs, are they already thinking today at level 5, or where do you see the system today?
That's an interesting question. Actually, my research shows that majority of us are still at level 3, where we're still not sort of confident that we can do it without the parent company's approval. we need to seek explicit approval before we do it. Majority of us would actually be in that level, and I would say that's the sort of the threshold, and it's difficult to break away from that. What we call it the permission paradox. We continue to seek permission before we do something different, something new, and things like that. I think the successful companies, successful GIs, successful teams are the ones who would actually have broken that barrier and gone up to 4 and 5, right? I don't think any one of us are in the first two levels anymore. That time is gone. But I think a lot of us are still stuck in the third level.
So we do hear a lot of examples of companies where the solutioning for global problems today starts within India.
Correct.
So, for example, you have operations like Google Pay, or a lot of e-commerce operations where India is the first place where the solution is starting, the products are developed, and then there is an opportunity to export that to the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which would be an example of level 5.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. That would be an example of level 5. Yes, exactly. Thank you, John, for that example. Yes.
All right. So moving on, in terms of talent for the GICs, we've seen that the number of architects that GICs are hiring has gone up by 3x, 3 times the number that were there 3 years back. And the number of patents being filed by Indian GICs have gone up by 5 times, right? You have a McKinsey report which says that the biggest reason for talent to work in GICs is the nature of the job, while the training and development that they get comes only at 13%. So a lot of the tech talent seems to feel that training and development is as good in the Indian ITES sector compared to GICs, while the nature of work that they get is really an attractive factor. So the question over here is, how do GICs attract and retain talent when there is high demand for niche talent but low supply? And has anything changed in this regard over the last few years?
Yeah. Well, the obvious answer to the last question, has anything changed, is a lot of things have changed, right? Everything has significantly changed, and I'm actually not surprised at the results that has come, where the nature of the job is the major attraction point, and training and development is not listed as one of the major attraction points for employees to join a GIC, right? And I see two driving reasons primarily for this. Two driving reasons. There was a time when we could afford to have the luxury of taking time off to learn. That is, taking time off from our work and then go and learn something and come back and and then continue the work. There was a time when we could have that luxury, but it is not so anymore. Right now, at this juncture, we don't have the the luxury of taking time off from work to learn and then come back. And that is the reason why when you ask people about training and development, they would consider training and development in that category only. That is in the category of where you have to take off from work and then study something. Maybe it is for a couple of hours, but maybe it is for a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks, and then come back and continue the work. But what actually happens here is that we are now in a place where we have to learn all the time, right? There is no separation between work and learning anymore. And this is where the concept of what we call as the learning in the flow of work is what is prevalent today. Right. I was actually, recently came across this book by Thomas Friedman. Now, all of us know him probably as the author of the book "The World Is Flat" sometime back, right? When the Bangalorization of IT started, right? So he has written a recent book called "Thank You for Waiting," and it's interesting because what he says is that if somebody is late, you should be thankful that you have got some extra time for yourself, right? But in that book, he presents some interesting data. So if you could just show that slide, John, I'll explain that slide. What it basically shows is this. What it basically shows is that there was a time when technology used to be lagging behind human adaptability, right? John, if you can show that slide, that will be great. Yes, thank you so much. Yes. So if you see in a time, there was a time when technology used to be behind human adaptability. That is, for example, when you invented the wheel or something like that, right? Or when you invented the automobile. So, so the human adaptability was faster than the technological changes. But what Thomas Friedman has come to a conclusion is that it is no more so. What he says is that we have actually crossed over where the rate of change of technology is much faster than what human beings can adapt to. And I'm sure it makes sense to you because you go out, buy a new gadget. By the time you get used to that gadget, or even before you open the gadget app, there is a newer version of that gadget available, right? You install a new software, and by the time you get used to the software, there is a new version of it, or there is an update to it that is coming on automatically, or whatever it is, right? So technological changes are faster than human adaptability today, and because of this reason, because technology is changing so fast, what will happen if we take time off to learn is that we will only increase this lag. If we take time off to learn, go and learn something and then come back, by the time you come back, we would see that the gap has further increased. So we are anyway, as such, we are playing catch up, right? Human beings, we are playing catch up with technology. The only way we can at least make sure that the gap is not increasing further is if we learn to learn all the time. If we do our learning and development all the time, not waiting to take time off from work. And that is really why the concept of learning in the flow of work becomes so very important, right? For example, if you are right now working on this webinar, and let us say you get stuck on this webinar, right? You're not going to stop this webinar and go and learn something and come back, right? But what you will do is you will immediately Google it, or you go to YouTube and check for a solution, and you will almost certainly find a solution. And then thereby you are able to overcome the problem that you have. You learn something, you apply something, and then you move on. So it's literally learn while you work because of the problems that arises, or because what else you can do with that technology and things like that. So this is the first reason why I believe people find that that learning and development is not the biggest reason for them to join a GIC, because people believe that learning and development is a given. It is a hygiene factor. It will happen, and I am anyway going to learn as I go along, right? And even if the organization doesn't support me, there are so many avenues for me to learn and things like that. And that is the reason why you'll find the learning and development going down in the ranking for reasons to join GIC. And so let us look at the next portion. The next portion is the nature of the job, right? Why is that the biggest advantage, right? So again, it's interesting. There is the group of professors from the London School of Economics who did a research on what is this what we call it the stages of life today, and they came up with this book called 100-Year Life. So if you could put that slide up, John. So the 100-year book basically shows us that for example, in my life state, my time, right? There used to be the life used to be pretty simple. It used to be this 3-stage model that is shown in your slide, right? We go to school, we go to colleges, we go to universities, we get education, but all with the purpose of getting work, and then we join work, and then we work for a specific period of time, and then ultimately we retire. Of course, in between somewhere we get married, we fall in love, we get children, grandchildren, and all that stuff. But leaving all that aside, life used to be pretty simple: study, work, retire, right? The 3-stage life. But what this authors found is that it is no more so. What they are saying is that right now we are into what we call as a multi-stage life, and the multi-stage life, as the name suggests, is pretty complex, right? It is about you start studying, and then you look at exploring some of your passions while studying, and you probably seek a part-time employment in a job as you study. Then maybe you will transition to a full-time job, and then you try out a full-time job for some time, you don't like it, you go and start your own startup and be self-employed, and then you decide that, okay, look, I'm not being utilized at one place probably fully, and then you get into a gig work economy where you have a portfolio of mix of paid and unpaid work. You volunteer for some time, you do some work, you gain some satisfaction and all that stuff, and then of course at some point in time you finally decide to retire. But again, that retirement age is obviously being pushed back several years as I speak. Right. So because of this multi-stage life, what has happened is today's employees have got significant amount of choice when it comes to what do they need to work, where do they need to work, what job do they need to pick up, etc. And because of that, the earlier attractions like security of job or the brand name of a company or a great and spacious office space or even sometimes pay is not that important for people, and that is why they are so much bothered about the nature of work, right? And so that is really the reason why people so basically what we need to do when GICs to attract right talent is very simply this: make sure that learning happens all the time, right? It's not a separate event happening from work, apart from work. Second is make sure that their nature of job is something that they love, and give them the freedom to work when they need and on what they need, right? So these are some of the things that will make sure that you attract the right type of employees to GICs.
There is no better time in the world to know that you have to learn all the time, right? We are right now in the middle of a global crisis where it's not only healthcare professionals who have to learn, but pretty much everyone. You have government servants, you have municipalities, you have company executives, all looking at learning what is happening out in the world in front of us to figure out how to navigate the future, right? So I totally agree with you that learning all the time is probably it's not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
So we want to come to question 3. A lot of times when we talk about learning for GICs, I think the focus is on technical learning, right? So you have a lot of knowledge which is traditionally seen as part of the engineering domain. You have the electronics or the information technology skills that we need. But can you talk a little bit about the role of human skills as well? What are human skills? Why are they important? And what role will they play going forward?
Yeah, it is interesting that you termed it human skills. Okay, so let me just tell you a story. All right, I don't know if how many of you have heard the story. There was a man just walking in the fields, and he sees at a distance he sees sort of a hot air balloon floating in the sky. And then he soon realizes that this hot air balloon is coming towards him, and then slowly the hot air balloon descends and reaches in a place where where very close to him, and he can see the person in the hot air balloon's basket, right? And this person asks this guy who is walking around, saying, "My dear friend, I am lost, and can you help me with where I am? Where am I?" So this man who is walking, he picks up his iPad, and then he punches in some sort of stuff, and then he finally tells the person who is on the hot air balloon. He says, "You are at 41 degrees 21 minutes and 12.2 seconds north. You are 2 degrees 10 minutes and 26.5 seconds east, and you are at an altitude of 434.56 feet above mean sea level." I've given you the most accurate information, right? And so the guy in the hot air balloon is obviously flabbergasted, and he says, "Oh my, you must be an engineer." So the man who is walking around asks him, "Oh, how did you guess that?" And the man in the hot air balloon says, "Look, you have given me absolutely technically correct information, but it is of absolutely no use to me, absolutely no value to me." right? So, you know, and this is really the situation of engineers, right, who are technically very qualified, technically brilliant, but when it comes to talking about problem solving, when it comes to resolving the problems of another person, you know, they are terrible. They speak they speak technology jargon, right? They can't really speak human language, right? And you see what happens. It doesn't solve the problem if we stick with technology and if we stick with you know, technological jargons and things like that. We need to be able to speak human language. We need to be able to articulate. We need to be able to understand, human needs, and that is where the concepts of design thinking, ability to narrate properly, ability to persuade people, ability to basically to articulate present and stuff like that becomes very important, right? So being able to know that, yes, I know technology and I can use technology jargons, but I'm not going to I'm going to choose to use human language so that it can make difference in another person and solve the other person's problem, is what makes the difference. And that is really really what makes the difference. And maybe we don't have time to go into details of that, but I would really recommend you to go and study the difference between a Nokia and an Apple, for example. How human skills make the difference, right? How anthropologists make the difference between technology versus meeting human needs, or for that matter, Netflix versus Blockbuster and things like that. So there are several cases like that. So yes, absolutely, human skills are important, and one of the most important skills are, of course, the ability to understand problems from a human point of view, which is broadly what we refer to as design thinking, and then of course the ability to narrate, explain, communicate, and things like that.
Could you also talk to us a little bit about working with a multi-generational workforce? Now the GICs have been around for 2 decades. You have people all the way from the Gen X to the Gen Y to the Gen Z, all working together. Gen Y seems to be the biggest cohort, but increasingly Gen Z, with every year, the percentage of people who are working in Gen Z grows larger, and Gen smaller, right? Do you see any difference in what each generation values at home? What are some of the challenges that you see in terms of managing multiple generations for a GIC?
Absolutely. Each generation has got our own way of learning, our own preferred way of learning, right? For example, people in the traditional style would have preferred to gain more information, which is called the information learning, right? So we gather information, process it, and then learn, right? But as we went along, it became transformational learning, right? As to how can a learning transform me, transform my thinking, my behavior, and my what I do and stuff like that. But specifically talking to Gen X and Gen Y, Gen X people are people who were pretty good at what we call self-directed learning, right? So they prefer self-directed learning. They choose what to learn, and then go through some structured self-directed learning process and things like that. But we actually look at millennials, and we realize that millennials generally prefer informal learning, on-demand learning in the flow of work, learning when I need it, right? I'm not going to learn something that that might be useful for me 20 years later, but I'm going to learn something as I go along, and so that's the type of learning that millennials really prefer, right? I mean, you look at, for example, calculus or trigonometry and stuff like that, which we have learned some time back and when we were in school, right? And maybe we don't use it any longer in the form that is essentially taught to us, right? So what the millennials are looking for is, look, what can I use, what can I gain, what can I learn, so that I can apply immediately and I can use it for my work, my passion, whatever it is, right, in my life and stuff like that. So these are typically the 4 types of learning. But I think currently we got to deal with these 2 types of learning, right? And that is where what we call as the future readiness of learning comes in. So if you could just put up that slide that that I have on this topic, we are looking at how do we accelerate the learning through making it future ready, right? So what learning sources can we provide? How can we ensure that self-directed learning is propagated and is encouraged and things like that, and of course accepting and understanding that there are different learning preferences between the different generations, as I already explained, right? But one thing, some of the things that are common are this. Social learning, for example, is common, right? Immaterial of where we are, what is my learning preference? Generally, we prefer to learn in a social way, right? And today, for example, we are looking at seamless learning. We don't want to learn something and jump from something to something else. And we want things that are linked. We want to be able to transition from one device to another while learning and stuff like that, right? Look at the concept of rapid learning, for example. There was a time when people used to believe that to acquire a skill, you got to spend a minimum of 10,000 hours to learn a skill. But I mean, who has 10,000 hours today? So what people do is people pick up learning, and that is what we typically is called as the rapid learning. And there are proponents like Josh Kaufman, who says that things can be learned in 20 hours, what is required for basic, and then you of course go on to learn as you go. You don't end the learning, but you don't wait for the 10,000 hours before you start working on or demonstrating a skill, right? So the concept of rapid learning is catching up. So basically, if you can make this learning itself future ready, you will be able to really, make people, it will really address their common needs. What's in it for me, and what, how is it going to help me to get ready for the immediate future that is ahead of me, right? So I would say this is the key to addressing the generational gaps that we see in our workforces from a learning point of view.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the questions that you typically ask today are to people is how many books are you reading in parallel? And there was a time when people used to read only one book at a time, but now the number could be anywhere from 5 to 20 in parallel. So you read something, then stop it, and then jump to something else, read that, and you're parallelly reading a lot of different kind of information from very, very wide variety of sources, right? That's how the world
Correct.
has evolved today.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
All right. So with that, we are going to our next poll question. What do you believe is the biggest challenge that GICs have to address for future readiness? Is it talent strategy? The amount of work that they have to put to attract the kind of talent required for future, or is it being able to acquire the digital skills required for the future, or is it the business alignment that GICs have with their parent organization? Which of these three do you see is the biggest challenge? Akanksha, would you mind pinning the question to the audience, the poll question?
Yes, John, thank you. Audience, please take up the second poll question, which says, what is the biggest challenge you believe GICs have to address for future readiness? The link has been provided on the chat section, which is on your right-hand side of the screen. Please click on the link, use the code 69560, and help us with your thoughts and your insights. And people are responding. We could see people have started responding. We could see 64% says talent strategy, 55% says digital transformation, 58, it reaches to 58, and 23% says business alignment with parent organization.
Alright, so talent strategy and digital transformation seem to be neck on neck.
Yes,
Again, if we had
yes.
asked this question, 3-4 years back, I believe digital transformation would have been number one at that point in time. Where the biggest challenge facing India as a country was the amount of talent that had digital skills. A lot of organizations embarked on a lot of digital upskilling over the last few years. And a lot of organizations have made that transition from working on earlier technologies, which are more web-based or more machine-based technologies, to more digital technologies today. All right, so I'm going to ask two questions quickly next to each other to Dr. Madana. One, if you can come back to the slide. Kansha?
Yes. John, if you can re-share your screen, please. We can't see it. Requesting you to screen share again.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Perfect it is.
All right, okay. So when it comes to talent, engagement and development, how are GICs addressing scalability? And a related question over here is, mass personalization. So when you're looking at leveraging digital, you have two competing challenges. You have scalability, cost effectiveness, and standardization on one end. You have personalization and localization, which are required on the other end. So how do you see both these being handled in practice? How can
Right.
organizations do this? What are solutions that they have?
Right. Thanks, John. In the interest of time, I'm going to be brief on this. So basically, for me, digital is less about technology and more about mindset. It's a culture, right? It's a culture of agility. It's a culture of what we call as decision velocity, right? It's a culture of information availability. It is a culture of quick analysis. It's a culture of adaptability and stuff like that, right? And so that is where the digital piece comes in. And so what we need to do is to provide employees with that type of learning atmosphere and that type of learning ability. So if you could just quickly show that slide, John. Primarily, it is about providing the employees with something which is which is platform agnostic, which is collaborative, which is exploratory, which can also be personalized and interactive, right? So that is really what digital access should be, because today learning is available all over the place. What organizations should not do is to limit their learning to what is provided by the organization. The organization should encourage and enable people to go and learn from anywhere, right? And that is really the crux of digital learning. So provide digital platform that will help them to learn anywhere, apart from the organizational LMS. Right. Coming to the next question that you asked about the what do we need to really how do we address this from a personalization point of view and customization point of view and still be scalable and stuff like that? I think the answer is very simple. The answer is modularization or bite-sized learning bits, right? So you create a global repertoire of bite-sized learning and then stitch it together for each individual person through what we today call as learning paths, right? So you don't create huge, large learning interventions, but you create quick, bite-sized learnings and then knit it together for John, knit it together for Akansha, knit it together for Madana, based on the personal needs of that particular person in what we call as a personalized learning path. I think that and platforms that can actually enable that, and platforms that generally will allow that type of a personalization even across content providers, right? It is not limited by content providers, is actually what would really be gainful for the people.
A related question to this, what is the importance of languages over here? And can you also expand the cultural context? Could you give some examples of learning how it's culturally different in different geographies, US, UK, India, Philippines, China, etc.?
Yeah, culture is very important, right? Culture is very, very important. And the term global has been used for quite a couple of decades now. Global means, be global but stay local, right? So the idea is that when I learn, I need to learn from a local context. I need to learn, preferably, maybe even using a local language. I can do that. But when I deliver, I'm delivering to a global audience, right? And so that is the time when I need to convert myself into a global person. So I learn locally. I take my inputs locally, but when I deliver, I must be able to deliver to a global client list and a global audience, right? So that is really the whole concept of global, right? From that point of view, yes, you can learn using a original language, but when you have to apply it, when you have to deliver the outcome of that learning, it has to be using a global language and in a global culture. And culture obviously is very, very important, right? And you have various ways of huge differences between the culture, right? For example, American culture is pretty straightforward and a sort of in the face, while an Eastern culture like that in Japan or in parts of Korea and stuff like that are more subtle, right? You can't use in the face type of aggressive behavior or I mean even assertiveness can be seen. What is assertiveness in America can be seen as aggressiveness in the East, in Japan or in Korea and stuff like that, and somewhere in between, through our country and things like that. For example, Indians are known not to have the ability to say no. So when we want to say no, we don't say no, but we use various ways. We can't say no straight because we believe that saying no is rude. While the Western countries, saying no is an accepted norm and things like that, right? So there are various such cultural aspects that we need to be aware of because we are ultimately delivering to a global clientele.
That's very interesting because when you talk in the context of people on the delivery front, you said learn local but deliver global. Whereas when you look at the same thing from the context of people in the front end of the business who are working with customers, people in sales, service, solutioning, etc. For them, it's typically the other way, right? Where you have you learn global, but then you contextualize and then act local. Right? So please keep that difference in mind depending on what target audience you are working with in your respective organization. Have over here, before we move on to audience questions, is the role of leadership in all this, right? So as GICs have to become GCCs and climb up the value chain, what role do you see in their leadership playing in all this, right? What kind of leadership will accelerate this transformation?
Yeah, thanks, John. So I told a story when we talked about the human skills that are required for people, right? So there is a part 2 of this story, So when the person in the hot air balloon tells the person on the ground that, hey, you are an engineer and all that you provided me with is some great and correct and information, but absolutely of no use to me. So the engineer turns back and tells this person, hey, then you must be a CEO. And the person in the hot air balloon is amazed and how he guessed. So he asked the engineer, look, so how did you know that I'm a CEO? And the engineer tells him, you have no idea where you are, you have no idea where you're going, and you can't process the information that I gave you, and ultimately you're blaming me for your problems, right? So that's really what sometimes leadership is all about, So leadership is very, very important in this transition. If GICs have to become GCCs, if GICs have to climb up that ladder, if GICs have to climb up that freedom ladder, if GICs have to attract the right type of people, if GICs have to provide the right type of opportunities and learning and things like that to employees, the leadership has to change. So let me just tell you what will not work. What will not work is the old command and control mechanism of leadership. What will not work is the power and position or designation based leadership. What will not work is the short-sightedness of the leadership. What will not work is the leadership driven through personal agenda, right? They will not work anymore in the current environment. If we have to accelerate, if we have to make a big difference in this, we have to adopt a different style of leadership. And this is what I call as the new way of thinking, right? So if you can just put up that slide in the new way of thinking. So primarily leadership has got two roles. One role is about visioning, right? Setting vision and strategy for the organization. And that is the leader's role. That the leader needs to set the vision, the leader needs to set the direction, the leader needs to set the boundaries, the leader needs to set the direction in which it needs to go. And at that time, the team is responsive to the leader's goal setting. But however, the danger is if after setting the vision and direction, if the pyramid remains like this is the traditional pyramid of any organization, right? The boss is at the top, the employees at the bottom, and so every employee works to please the boss and not the customer, and the customer gets ignored. How many times have you probably called up a call center told that, look, okay, I can't make a decision on this. This is beyond my pay grade, and you got to talk to my supervisor, right? So those type of responses come because organizations stay in this particular style of leadership even after setting the vision and direction. So the new way of leadership is this: after setting the vision and direction, the leader needs to literally be willing to step down and go down the pyramid and say that, hey, now that I have set the vision and direction, I am no more responsible for the implementation. You are responsible for the implementation. And hey, I'm not going anywhere, but I will be available to you as a resource. Or in other words, I will serve you so that you can implement this vision and direction. And this is what I call as the servant leadership model, right? So, and this is what I practice, this is what I teach people, and things like that. And this is so very important in the context of GICs that we are talking about. Because if the leaders do not step aside, if the leaders do not empower, if the leaders do not enable the people to take ownership for the actions and implement the action, it's not going to go anywhere, right? And that is really what makes the difference. So if our GIC model has to become successful in India, has to thrive in India, shed your old command and control mechanism and embrace servant leadership. That's my simple message when it comes to leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Madana, for that. All right, so with that, we come to an end of the questions that we had to ask Dr. Madana. It's time to take a few audience questions. So we've had a couple of questions that have been coming in from the audience. The first question that we have over here, I think, Akansha, if you can let us know who asked this question. I'm going to read out the question. With a changed outlook towards GICs as centers of excellence, how will they overcome challenges towards becoming GCCs after the disruption caused by COVID-19? I think this is the million-dollar question on everyone's lips.
Yeah. To me, if COVID-19 has proven anything, it has proven undoubtedly our adaptability to challenges, or our way of finding right workarounds when challenges hit us, right? Who would have thought that that complete IT infrastructures, complete office complexes could be shut down and people could shift every single piece of work home without compromising on the security of the clients and without compromising on the quality of the thing, etc., right? So if that is really what it has proven to us, is that we've got to be adaptable. And this is really what I also talked about when it becomes digital. Digitization is about that. Digitization is about the ability to do the work or meet the client's need immaterial of where you are, right? It is not based on your infrastructure. It is not based on where you are. It is not based on what time you operate and stuff like that. So I think if something has proven here is our ability to adapt, and that's a great thing. And all that I would say is that it's taught us a good lesson. Let us stay with it and let us move on in that direction.
All right. So one last question, Dr. Madana. Does technology like conversation AI impact talent requirements in GICs?
Yes, absolutely. I already said that, right? Obviously, lower end jobs will be eliminated, as more and more of these technologies, related with AI and machine language and RPAs and stuff like that come in. So yes, it will impact the talent needs in GICs. And but what we need to do is to focus on climbing up the value chain. So if we are able to move up the value chain, for example, if the ratio of engineering R&D shifts from 59% to 75%, then it will not impact our ability. So all that we need to do is to make sure that we climb up the value chain and we are able to provide higher value added services to the clients, and we don't need to worry about any AI taking our jobs.
So I think a lot of implications there for the way we acquire and retain talent, and also for the way that we make our talent learn, both on the technology skills as well as the human skills.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Madana. That was a very interesting session that we had with you. Back over to Akansha.
Okay, team, thank you for that wonderful session. It was really, really insightful. And with that, let us wrap today's session. And thank you, Dr. Madana Kumar, and thank you, John. I think we have Akansha back. Akansha, would you like to take it over?
Yes, thank you, Reshma. So thank you, John, and thank you, Dr. Madna. It was a wonderful session with some great insights. And with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webcast. We have many more questions coming in, but unfortunately, due to lack of time, we will have to wrap it up here. Once again, we thank our today's webcast partner Enparadigm and our speakers for the invaluable information that has been shared with us today. Meanwhile, you can provide your feedback in the survey link provided in the chat section, because your input matters. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you, John, and thank you, Dr. Madna.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a great day and a great week ahead, everybody. Thank you.